This talk was originally given as part of the Fall of Theory, a multidisciplinary gathering of academics and artists, where speakers were invited to reflect on the state of theory in the fall of 2024. I took the opportunity to reflect on the double entendre in the event's title, fall denoting both the season as well as a state of fallenness. I think there is a belief that theory is something which can redeem us, redeem humanity from its fallen state. Perhaps this idea is even embedded in the very word theory. After all, theory stems from the Greek theoria, which derives from theos, meaning God. That is why I seek to interrogate the concept of redemption, with monsters instead of messiahs as my guides. This talk was originally given on November the 2nd, 2024. Forgive me for speaking to you about monsters so shortly after Halloween. Then again, perhaps now is always the appropriate time to speak about monsters. That is, if we agree with Antonio Gramsci. Actually, this is a loose paraphrase, attributed by Slavoj Žižek. Gramsci does not write, "Now is the time of monsters," but rather, "In this interregnum a great variety of morbid phenomena occur." Regardless, we have a good idea of who or what these monsters or morbid phenomena were to Gramsci, who writes these lines from inside of a fascist jail cell. The interregnum is the time of monsters. It is a between time, defined not by the passage of time, but by its suspension. In political parlance, interregnum signifies the suspension of normal government operations between successive reigns. Thus, interregnum implies renewal as much as suspension. One can imagine Gramsci awaiting a revolution that never came, awaiting an impossible redemption. If only the class-conscious proletariat would seize the reins of history and renew its progress. A similar notion of time appears in the epistles of Paul. The book of Corinthians reads, "And last of all he appeared even unto me, as to one born out of due time." Some have interpreted "born out of due time" to mean that Paul laments being born after the time of Christ. However, this phrase actually translates the Greek ektromati, which signifies a premature birth or miscarriage. Thus, an improved translation would read, "Last of all he appeared even unto me, as to one prematurely born." In antiquity, ektroma was a term of abuse, denoting deformity, rejection, or monstrosity. Paul calls himself a monster due to his late spiritual conversion. He scorned the church that he now loves, but Christ, the Redeemer, was willing to appear even to a monster like him. This further brings to mind the Pauline antithesis of flesh and spirit, where flesh signifies a primary state of fallenness, and spirit the possibility of redemption through faith. This aspect of Pauline theology has been the subject of a redemptive historical interpretation, where flesh signifies the anachronic mode of human existence before Christ, and spirit the fullness of redemptive historical time after Christ. Thus, Paul can preach to his followers in Romans, "But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit." The examples of Gramsci and Paul suggest that monstrosity goes hand in hand with redemption, but only inasmuch as monstrosity denotes untimeliness or fallenness. I would now like to turn to some examples that problematize such teleological conceptions of redemption, starting with a short story by Argentine author Jorge Luis Borges. The House of Asterion is written from the perspective of the eponymous Minotaur of Greek legend. As the title suggests, much of the story consists of Asterion's ruminations on his house, the Minoan labyrinth. Legend has it that every 9 years, King Minos of Crete compelled the Athenians to choose 14 citizens to be sent into the labyrinth, in retribution for the murder of his son, Prince Androgeus, who died at Athenian hands. Borges's Asterion considers himself a redeemer, whose mission is to deliver his victims from all evil. But meanwhile, Asterion awaits his own redeemer, whose coming was foretold by a former victim. Asterion puzzles over this prophecy, painfully aware of his singularity and chimeric ambiguity. What will my redeemer be like, I wonder? Will he be bull or man? Could he possibly be a bull with the face of a man? Or will he be like me? Here we see Asterion yearning for mutual recognition, but his redeemer, Theseus, grants only a quick death. Equally abrupt is Borges's conclusion. Can you believe it, Ariadne? The Minotaur scarcely defended itself. Borges cleverly inverts the coordinates of the classical myth by having Theseus play the role of the monster through his slaying of a non-resisting victim. In this way, the House of Asterion can be interpreted as a post-human allegory, both for its portrayal of the monster as a sympathetic figure and its suggestion that classical humanism has turned monstrous. Perhaps Theseus should have heeded Nietzsche's warning that whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster. Yet if Theseus is truly the monster, this raises many questions about the relationship between monstrosity and redemption. Can a monster also be a redeemer? Was Asterion truly redeemed? Could it be necessary for us to see the monster and the redeemer as hybrid identities, like the Minotaur? Perhaps we should ask Picasso these questions, who happens to have undergone a multiple decades-long obsession with the Minotaur. If all the ways I have been along were marked on a map and joined up with a line, Picasso once said, it might represent a Minotaur. This line can be traced as far back as his earliest known work, Le Petit Picador Jaune, which Picasso painted at the age of 8, after his father, who was also his first art teacher, took him to a bullfight in Malaga. The bullfight must have made a tremendous impression on the young Picasso, who returned to this imagery throughout his lifetime. Compare with Le Matador, a self-portrait painted over 80 years later. Far from portraits of the artist as a brooding recluse, these self-portraits depict the artist as a macho bullfighter. Indeed, Picasso was notorious for his machismo and incorrigible womanizing. Yet he often sensed himself to be painfully distant from the ego ideal of the masterful matador, which is permanently threatened by the raging bull of the unconscious, as we see here in Bullfight, Death of a Toreador. The Minotaur is a hybrid of these juxtaposed figures, in which Picasso saw many of the contradictions in his own character embodied. Thus, Picasso's Minotaurs are like dialectical self-portraits. The Minotaur shows the rape of a young woman in stark chiaroscuro, while Minotaur lovingly contemplating a sleeping woman shows a softened version of what could easily be a prelude to the same violent scene. In contrast, Dying Minotaur seems like an expression of Picasso's guilty conscience. The fatally wounded Minotaur looks up, as if to implore the audience's forgiveness. Critics note that the faces in the audience all resemble that of Picasso's long-suffering mistress, Marie-Thérèse Voltaire. The Blind Minotaur shows Picasso's alter ego being led by a young girl holding a dove, a symbol of hope and renewal. Perhaps the same girl features in Minotauromachie, this time holding a candle and proffering a bouquet of flowers. Picasso called 1935, the year in which he produced Minotauromachie, the worst time in his life. His first wife, Olga Koklova, was on the verge of leaving him after discovering that his mistress, Voltaire, was pregnant. Critics have suggested that Koklova is represented by the wounded toreador on horseback in the center of the image. As for the girl, Ben Okri interprets her as a redemptive figure. Her serenity is astonishing. Her eyes do not judge. She does not see the monster. Maybe she doesn't see him as a monster. If Okri is right, then Minotauromachie marks a shift in what the Minotaur symbolizes to Picasso. Etched under the gathering clouds of World War II, Minotauromachie feels at once both deeply personal and darkly prophetic. The Minotaur has escaped from Picasso's psyche and re-emerged onto the stage of history. The Minotaur's presence makes the world claustrophobic, writes Okri. Because we have failed to transform the animal within our labyrinth, the animal within is conquering us, unleashing vengeance. The rise of fascism induced Picasso to use his art as a tool for expressing political dissent. Doubtlessly the best-known example of this is Guernica, which Picasso painted in response to the bombing of the northern Basque town by the Nazis and Italian fascists during the Spanish Civil War, at the behest of Franco's nationalist forces. I only wish to highlight the bull on the left side of the image, standing over a screaming woman who is holding her dead child. The woman, the bull, and the horse have also all had their tongues replaced by daggers, evoking the artifice and hybridity that characterize the Minotaur. Hereafter, Picasso's Minotaurs take on a different aspect, sometimes appearing as saviors or redeemers, as in Minotaur with dead mare in front of a cave and Minotaur in a boat saving a woman. Yet if redemption traditionally means deliverance from evil, then Minotauromachie and Guernica imagine an impossible redemption. In a sense, Okri continues, the Minotaur cannot be conquered. It too is a part of life, of us, a part of life's duality. The Minotaur, therefore, is not evil. Repellent, sad, a touch pathetic and fascinating, it is an ambiguous figure. It represents something in us, something that has been ignored or gone out of control. But when this irrational self bursts out, rampant, what recourse do we have? It's all in the girl, Picasso says, in the purity of heart and motive, in light, and in seeing clearly. In other words, monstrous evil and teleological redemption are part of the same self-perpetuating myth cycle, where a redemption infinitely deferred births monsters that increase the exigency of the impossible promise. Picasso says, if redemption is still possible, it is not transcendent, but immanent, not beyond, but within. To reclaim its possibility from the impossible promise, we must embrace the monstrous other that we always already are ourselves. To help us see clearly what this impossible possibility may entail, I would now like to turn to the TV series From. And spoiler alert, the remainder of this talk will contain spoilers for Season 1. From's setting can be likened to a labyrinth. It takes place in a small town where monsters appear at night and mysterious forces foil every attempt to flee. None of the residents knows why they are there, but everyone knows how they got there. You start by driving down a road. It could be any road in America, when suddenly a fallen tree blocks your way. Then the murder of crows comes to welcome you. You turn around and keep driving, hoping to find an alternative route, but wind up in a town you don't remember passing through. If you continue down the road, you'll wind up in the same town again and again. The road is endless, but always ends in exactly the same place. Imparting these enigmatic but recognizable signs helps residents to gain the trust of newcomers while explaining their situation. Escape is futile, and staying out after dark is deadly. It's imperative that they shelter in town. The buildings are protected by talismans that prevent monsters from entering, unless they are let in. For the monsters here take human forms and try to trick the residents into enabling their own demise. What matter of being are these monsters? And what accounts for the talisman's apotropaic effect on them? These puzzles form part of From's labyrinthine logic, with the enduring promise that solving enough puzzles will enable the residents to return home. This is one idea of redemption presented by From, which is akin to the historical or eschatological sense espoused by Gramsci and Paul. But From challenges this idea in ways similar to Borges and Picasso. Similar to Borges, an author obsessed by labyrinths, From questions the ambiguous entanglement of monstrosity and redemption. And similar to Picasso, an artist who struggled with the monster inside of himself, From considers if redemption may not equate to a disfiguring loss of self. I'd like to thread these questions together through a brief character study. But first I'll need to establish slightly more background context. From's setting is divided into two regions, known as Town and Colony House. This divide is geographical as well as ideological. Town consists of a handful of single-family dwellings, a diner, chapel, barn, bar, which was formerly a gas station, a police station, formerly a post office, and a clinic, formerly a school. These landmarks alone suggest that town residents structure their life in a way that mirrors home. In contrast, Colony House is a large Victorian mansion located up the hill from town, which is set up as a commune. Its 40 or so residents share possessions and responsibilities, as well as grow their own food and marijuana. Whereas town residents are committed to their nostalgic idea of home, Colony House residents are equally committed to transforming what home might mean. Colony House's de facto leader, Donna, voices an alternative sense of redemption that I'd like to explore. In the penultimate episode of Season 1, Donna is sent reeling by the suicide of a Colony House refugee. Colony House was abandoned 2 episodes previously, after monsters got in and killed 14 residents, forcing the survivors to take refuge in town. Meanwhile, several town residents are leading the construction of a radio tower in a bid to communicate with the outside world. Donna is drinking alone at the bar when she's confronted by the sheriff's deputy, Kenny. Skeptical that the radio tower will actually work, Donna challenges Kenny on the dangers of promising the impossible.
You don't think the tower's gonna work?
Do you?
I think it might. I think it's worth trying.
And what happens when you fail?
Then we try again.
No. No, you stupid little shit. That's the point. You don't try again. Because you got people's hopes up. You made them believe. You take that away now, and they're lost. They give up. And they fucking die.
Kenny ridicules what he sees as Donna's pessimism, asking if there's no other alternative than to give up hope and be hunted by monsters every single night.
What are we supposed to do? Just sit here and not try to go home? Live in a place where those things come to hunt us every single night?
Why not? At least here the monsters have the decency to show you what they are.
This line is striking. The clear suggestion is that the outside world is just as full of monsters, except they are better at disguising themselves. Who are these real monsters? In our world, the term monster is commonly used as an epithet to mark as different those who are seen as abnormal or deviant. Here it is worthwhile to note that Donna is quite clearly queer-coded as a butch lesbian. Thus we can imagine that she is possibly someone who has been labeled a monster in this dehumanizing way. Recognizing this, it seems that Donna uses the term monster not in the way that dehumanizes others by ontologizing difference, but precisely in a way that subverts this usage. Simply put, according to Donna, the real monsters in our world are those who would label others as monsters in order to dehumanize them. This subversive usage further underwrites the real tensions between town residents and colony house residents. There are hints throughout the show that the latter are negatively stereotyped by the former as sex-crazed drug addicts. Donna corrects this misconception in the same conversation with Kenny.
I know you guys from town look at Colony House and figure it's all just drinking and fucking. But it was more than that. It was special. All those people from all those different places, different lives, everyone living together. For all the fear and all the monsters in the forest bullshit, there was something. There was a joy in that house. For a little while, anyways. And like most things, none of us appreciated it nearly as much as we should have, and now it's fucking gone.
For Donna, recognizing real monsters forms part of the protective boundary work that enables collective survival and the flourishing of difference. This creates the conditions of possibility for an otherwise impossible utopia, an other utopia, which doesn't exist in a transcendental beyond, but lies in the imminent here and now, if only we learn to embrace the monstrous other that we always already are ourselves. For Gramsci and Paul, Monstrosity signifies a state of fallenness, from which one seeks redemption. Alternatively, Borges and Picasso consider if monster and redeemer might signify two aspects of a single Janus-faced god. Finally, Frum teaches us that monsters might be our redeemers, but only as harbingers of failed redemption. No, this is not to endorse the pessimistic conclusion, as Franz Kafka phrases it in a letter to Max Brod. Oh, there is hope, an infinite amount of hope, just not for us. What I have in mind is more like Guillermo del Toro's attitude towards monsters. Monsters, I believe, are patron saints of our blissful imperfection, for they allow and embody the possibility of failing. The point, I believe, is to salvage an alternative sense of redemption from the ruins of the historical or eschatological teleological sense. This might resemble what Jacques Derrida calls a messianicity without messianism, which is a way of thinking about the present moment as radically open to alterity and futurity, whereas awaiting redemption by a coming Messiah forecloses such openness and births real monsters to force the enclosure. Messianic redemption is doomed to fail, but its failure may yet guide us to more humanizing possibilities, as Donna realizes, namely, making kin with monsters, and making ourselves, monstrosity and all, collectively at home within the labyrinth.